Well, again, good morning. Thank everyone for coming out this morning. I am Dr. K.L. Allen, Regional Vice President for the Northeast region. It's just very exciting. Before I move forward and before Sarah Norman walks out, Sarah, can you come back in here pretty quickly? Did Sarah just leave us? I'll move on, and when I get back, I will give her a shout out. And so it's an honor to welcome you to the Future of Work and Learning, an executive leadership breakfast. So let's give yourselves a round of applause for showing up this morning. You can do better than that. Come on, it's money. Let's get some excitement in here. So Sarah is back now. I want to give some kudos to Sarah. Sarah put this together as well as Doris and others. So let's make sure we give them a round of applause for their hard work as well. So this morning, we gather not just to network, but to align strategy as well as innovation, talent with opportunity, and education with the speed of change. We have senior leaders in the room from across many sectors, such as healthcare, technology, finance, manufacturing, consulting, and government. Each of you plays a pivotal role in how we shape the future of work, and more importantly, how we ensure that the future is inclusive, agile, as well as sustainable. At WGU, we've long believed that education should be the launchpad for economic mobility and the engine for workforce resilience. But we also understand that no single university, company, or agency can meet the moment alone. That's why today it's about collaboration. To quote Helen Keller, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. In this ever exponential change, collaboration isn't just nice to have, it's a competitive edge. So thank you for showing up with intention. Let's use this space to challenge the status quo, explore bold solutions, and co-author the future of work and learning. The next voice you hear, I'm not going to tell how we met this morning, but the next voice you will hear will be Michelle Vaughn, who serves as the Assistant Secretary for Strategy and Planning at the Executive Office of Technology and Services and Security. She has 18 years of experience in the Commonwealth. Michelle has held several positions at the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Massachusetts Department of Transportation, and State Senator. Michelle lives in the Dorchester neighborhood in Boston, Massachusetts. So let's give her a round of applause for that. With her wife and their rescue dogs, she cherishes spending time and making memories with family and friends. That's a great thing to make memories with family and friends. In terms of reading, listening to music, I'll have to ask your top podcasts and music before the end of today as well. And knitting to unwind. I love this. Michelle says, just say yes mentality has been instrumental in creating a life she loves and finds rewarding both professionally as well as personally as well as professionally. So let's give her a resounding applause, Michelle Vaughn.
Everyone, and not maybe surprisingly, that title is not the longest title in our office. So thank you, Dr. Allen and WGU for having me here today. It's my pleasure to welcome you for this panel and to talk about the future of work and learning. I mean, the topic is timely and it is critical in our rapidly changing landscape of technology and workforce development. As we all know, with the advent of AI, machine learning, and emerging technologies is reshaping how we work and how we learn. I'm thrilled to know that today's event brings together senior leaders from various sectors, healthcare, technology, finance, manufacturing, and government, to discuss how we can adapt these innovative disruptors, reskill our teams, and build agile tech-enabled learning ecosystems. At the Executive Office of Technology, we're deeply committed to fostering innovation and workforce development. Our efforts align with the Commonwealth's AI strategy, aimed to leverage Massachusetts' strengths in education, life sciences, innovation, and the economic spheres to spur economic development and competitiveness. Our strategy includes a purposed focus on ensuring that our workforce is equipped with the necessary skills to thrive in this new era. This includes ongoing training and leadership programs for our current workforce, as well as strong partnerships with the higher ed institutes across Massachusetts. These collaborations offer students the opportunity to work on defined use cases and projects in areas such as AI, data science, and cybersecurity. These partnerships provide unique opportunities to bring state employees and students together to develop and deploy business solutions that enhance services for Massachusetts citizens. Students gain firsthand experience in business and technology within the public sector through these projects. The effort leverages the vast talent within the Commonwealth agencies, as well as local higher ed institutes, to assist with current initiatives and expand our talent pipelines. We are proud to report that not only have these partnerships created tools to improve citizens' engagement, students have been hired right into the stake workforce, continuing to develop and implement citizen-facing solutions using innovative technologies. Today's panel will delve into how employers are responding to the shift brought about by emerging tech. We will hear from the panel on how they're rethinking talent strategies, reskilling their workforce, and building agile learning ecosystems to stay ahead. This conversation will provide us with actionable strategies to align our business goals with a tech-enabled, skills-driven future. I encourage you all to take this opportunity to network with your peers, share your insights, and learn from each other. Together, we can elevate our innovative workforce and ensure that we are well prepared for the future of work and learning. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the panel's discussion. And I'll now introduce today's moderator for the panel, Michael Horn.
Thank you so much. We are delighted for this. Let's bring up everyone for the panel. We already have Will up here. We have Kara up here. Let's bring Wayne and Paul as well. And while they assemble, first, thanks to Western Governors University for bringing us all together. Thanks for them printing some paper from trees for me and giving you a copy of my book. I really appreciate that as well. And I'm very excited for the conversation that we're going to have this morning with you all. What I will tell you is we're going to talk for 55 minutes up here, and then we would love to invite questions from all of you for about 15 minutes as well. So as you're listening, if there's provocations, things that spark questions for you, things that you want to dig into more, or hear our outstanding panelists, please do not hesitate. Write it down, hold the thought, and then when we open it up, we'd love to entertain and engage in those as well. And just to give you a quick rundown of who's here, all the way at the end, we have Will Bass, formerly of Comcast, who's now working a variety of gigs right now, including advising Western Governors University. And so thank you for being here. We have Kara, who's a senior principal at Accenture here as well. And then we have Paul Bingham from the Senior Vice President and, of course, Executive Dean at Western Governors University's School of Technology. I've written down here that you were an FBI agent before, so if things go crosswise with me and you, we'll know who's going to win that. And then we have Wayne, who's currently serving as an advisor to a couple of tech companies focused on both data and cybersecurity, and formerly you were vice president at AWS. So we've got folks that are really have their pulse, I think, on the leading edge of what's changing, both in the workforce and how we actually equip talent to be able to fill those rapidly changing roles. And I want to frame the future and have you all react to this up front, because depending on where you look, there's either lots of doom and gloom around AI and how it's changing the economy and the future of work and the workforce. But there's also opportunity. And so I want to start our Monday morning off with excitement and opportunity. We'll get to the pessimism that perhaps you have as well. But maybe we'll start all the way at the end, Will, and work our way down. Just what excites you most at the moment about the potential of AI and emerging technologies in the workplace itself?
Yeah, no, I am excited about it. I read something recently from Reid Hoffman, who founded LinkedIn, and he says that people break into kind of 4 categories when it comes to AI. You're either a doomer, a gloomer, a zoomer, or a bloomer. So you're either a doomer and think the world is ending, a gloomer and saying my career's over and my kids aren't going to get jobs. You're the zoomer saying, boy, I'm latching onto this is the future, and this is my ticket to greatness. Or you're a bloomer where you're saying, I see the opportunity here, but you have to be careful, and make sure that you lay the right foundations and gradually ease into the future. So I would probably put myself in that bloomer category. One of the things I'm optimistic about is I see AI making me better in the workplace. Some of the things that I've always maybe struggled with a little bit, I've not been great at math, I can plug that into AI and now I can come up with some financial analysis really, really quickly. And so it's kind of like my secret superpower, so to speak. I also like the fact, having been in the workforce now for over 30 years, that one of the things that's really important is wisdom. So it's not just experience, but the ability to look at what AI tells you, what your outputs are, and then have the wisdom to say, this is how we should use it, this is how we should employ it. And so being able to draw across multiple career experiences helps. Lastly, I think of my wife, who's an entrepreneur, and I'm excited for her because AI is kind of allowing smaller organizations to thrive. Maybe you don't have huge numbers of staff that you can draw on like a large organization, but by using AI, you have access to that information to compete, and I think it's going to be a positive for entrepreneurs as well.
Thanks, Will. It's fun to hear what you're saying about superpower. I feel like that's helping me too, whether it's Copilot or one of the Gen AI models. I do feel like I'm able to jump in and use those tools very easily, and they make me better. They help me put my thoughts together. They give me a starting point, right? And I love your comment about wisdom. It takes wisdom to really review what is coming out of those models or what is coming out of the tools that I'm using. And so I get excited about being able to use it, but also being able to evaluate and put my brain around it as well. I'm a parent of 4 young professionals and their partners. And as I look across all their career paths that they've started down, I feel like AI is going to make an impact for each and every one of them, no matter which field they chose. And I get excited about that. I also get excited that all of us, I'll say myself in this category, all of us older generation, we can use it too, and we can catch on really quick. I've watched my husband, as a realtor in the area, jump in and use it for his role as well. And it used to be that we'd have to teach him technology over a weekend. When he got his new cell phone, it was like, okay, which kid is coming to do dad's onboarding? Because it won't be me. But I think it's a tool set and it's a technology that so many of us can wrap our heads around and can have a lot of fun with, as well as get excited about the potential. And in the work world, I'm excited for it too. I think it's going to move us forward, and I get a little worried at times. Sometimes I could wake up a doomer, but at the same time, I think as long as we're careful, I feel good about the tools. I feel good about the technology that's coming forward, and I think we're smart enough to really to guide it in a good way. Pass it to you.
That's great. So I'm going to also provide a generational reference. So thank you for cracking that egg open, Kara.
Yeah.
Some of us remember, as I do, when the microwave oven came into our lives. This is in the 1970s. And I remember well. I even remember where it sat on our kitchen counter at my parents' house. And it was so exciting. This microwave oven showed up. And the promise of the microwave oven was it was going to render obsolete all of your other kitchen appliances. You weren't going to need an oven because you could do it faster in the microwave oven. You weren't going to need the stove because with a couple of little extra implements, you could do everything in the stove. There were all of these things that it was just going to it was going to render all of them useless. And over time, what has happened? Well, none of those things became obsolete nor useless. It sat alongside all of them and made them more efficient, or made your time in the kitchen more efficient. I remember, wow, you can boil water in this thing? Well, you can, but be careful, because whatever you just boiled it in is going to scald your hands when you take it out, that glass Pyrex bowl or whatever it is. I don't boil water in a microwave. I don't know how many of you do anymore. Well, now I use, although truth be told, I use an electric kettle. All it does, it added to it. But as the explosion of Gen AI happened, more or less concurrent with the release of ChatGPT to the world, This was the kitchen appliance that started going through my head was, is this the microwave oven of the future that is going to claim to render everything else obsolete, but end up just sitting alongside and making everything else more efficient? Or will it be, now it's out of the kitchen, but will it be a smartphone, which actually has, if you think of the iPhone or the other smartphones, sorry, anybody who uses an Android, which has rendered literally tech obsolete over time. We don't think of all of the things. Almost none of us have cameras anymore. We don't use a separate GPS in our car. We don't have to have a separate. You get the idea. And I've asked people over and over time, like, well, what is it? Is it the microwave or is it the smartphone? And in either case, I agree with you. It's here to stay, and I would put myself in the category of this is pretty awesome. Let's see what we can do with it.
I think it's going to be both the cell phone and the microwave.
Yes.
So my perspective is as a lifelong product builder. So I'm a technologist and I'm an optimist. And I don't see how you can approach any new technology without some level of optimism. There needs to be some caution as well. But I am, by all stretches of the imagination, super optimistic about what we are doing with today's AI. We talk about AI like it's brand new. It's not. It's 70 years old. Right? If you want to go back and look at the original papers, we've been hacking at this problem for a long time. We just happened to hit its really interesting inflection point in November of 2022. And the inflection point was even more pronounced because it came at a consumer level, just like the smartphone did. Right? If we tried to introduce smartphones into corporations as a business-to-business device, we'd still be on the BlackBerry. Right? Smartphone would have died. All right, but we introduced smartphones really to consumers, and consumers really do drive a lot of behavior. And so with ChatGPT, that happened. And even more so, every CEO in the world thought they were behind before we even started. So we had this kind of like hype cycle that's bigger than anything we've ever seen before. I'm still an optimist. Right? So I look at AI as a means to accelerate solutions in the same way, and yes, I've been around for a while too, the same way that the internet accelerated solutions, the same way that cloud accelerated solutions, AI will do the same. Now some people will say, well, what about mobile? Didn't that accelerate solutions? It really was built on cloud and built on devices. So it was a little less of an accelerant. It might have been an accelerant in terms of starting fires, but it was much less of an accelerant than the other technology changes. So if you look at AI in the same way that we looked at the internet and the same way we looked at cloud, and if you haven't studied those, it's worth studying, especially when you think about how you have to also help change the world. It is like that. The difference, that first one I mentioned, it took about 15 years to really catch on. The second one took about 7 to 10 years to catch on. This one, depends on how you want to measure it, but it's 3 to 5 for it to catch on. So the challenge isn't so much that it's super scary. The challenge is it feels scary because it's super fast. Right? So for all of you, if you think you're behind, be less paranoid. And if you, for the one or two you think you're really ahead, be more paranoid.
I like that quote where you just left it. Feels scary because it's super fast. I want to get into where you are, you mentioned that you do have your moments, Kara, where you wake up a little pessimistic about where this is all going. Specifically, where you're nervous around what AI and automation might do to the nature of work or workforces or the volume of jobs and things of that nature. I'd love to hear that soundtrack, and then we can sort of dig into the specifics a little bit more. Maybe Wayne, why don't you take us off here to start and then run down again?
Yeah, I'd start off by, and again, I'm coming at this kind of as a product builder, but what I do is I see this again raising the bar for talent, raising the bar for leadership. If you look at what I said a minute ago in terms of speed, there was a point where when you introduced a technology, it took a generation for that technology to flip over to something else. And a generation is about 15 years. Now that seems like a really long time today, like nobody can even measure 15 years. But if we go back and we look at technology and say, when were they introduced? When did sort of the visionary folks start using them? And then when did the majority of folks use it? And majority is not a bump, right? It's a long plateau. It's a generation. Now, it took me a while to kind of figure this out. I'm like, why was that? Well, if you look at the workforce, people don't change, right? Usually when you get out of school, you know something really well, doesn't matter what you do, you kind of like to carry that through. And you get incrementally better, but you don't get radically better. And so 15 years later, the technology flips over, you're 15 years into your career, you can pretty much ride the next 10 years on that transition, and you'll be okay. That was true when I started my career, right? It was also true that it took like 3 years to launch a product, right? So that doesn't happen anymore. So if you roll forward like to the internet and to cloud, that was about 7 years, right? It took about 7 years, so kind of in your career you had to flip twice, right? Some people didn't, and they just left their career, and some people did. We're at a point right now where you have to flip your knowledge base roughly every 5 years. And if you don't, like, you're going to be left behind. So how many times is that in a 40-year career? It's every day, right? So I kind of look at where we are today, and I think of this in that perspective. I see this is how this technology is transforming how we think, how we mentor, how we sponsor, how we engage.
Thanks. I promise I won't have bad analogies for our whole time here, but there's another one that is seemingly relevant to me in terms of the job anxiety. Mm-hmm. And as I think the first time I read it, and although I've heard it several times now, was in an IBM report on AI that said IBM, AI won't replace jobs, but people who know how to work with AI will replace people who don't know how to work with AI. And again, it's been restated several times. I was thinking this morning about this, kind of like, well, what do you think about AI? And while it might surprise some of you, I was not alive when the 1800s became the 1900s. But I suspect there were a lot of conversations somewhere around that point in time about, what do you think about this Ford thing? And I can only imagine all of the people who were stagecoach drivers and streetcar drivers, I don't know what they call them, pilots, coachmen, blacksmiths, who were all like, well, we're hosed. Like this whole Ford thing is just going to ruin everything. And certainly, I don't know if any of you have in your current family any stagecoach drivers, because Ford did change the landscape of transportation. But somehow there are still jobs for all kinds of people, because rather than being stagecoach drivers, I was thinking about it as I jumped into an Uber this morning. I was like, well, it's kind of like a stagecoach driver, but way more comfortable for all of us. But I think it's just the nature of the work will change, but there will still need to be work. God bless them all. There's used car salespeople, there are new car salespeople, there are mechanics. And so, again, the jobs, I think, are changing, will continue to change, probably more rapidly. But there's just going to still be opportunity for people willing to work.
Yeah. That's a great thought about the stagecoach drivers. I like, Wayne, I like how you said flipping your knowledge. Sometimes it feels like we're flipping so fast that we're getting dizzy, right? That we are asked to flip and flip again. But I do feel like the job changes will be about skills. And so it becomes, how can we train our teams? How can we help people get ready for new jobs or for jobs that require new skills? And I think it's about the skills. I also, I like to think that it's opening up a lot of creative areas as well. There are kids that are going to really enjoy building models and doing some of the tasks that it requires. I think we're going to need our critical thinkers, right? We're going to need our teams to be really critical thinkers and make really good decisions about where AI is used and what is changing and what does that mean, and trying to make sense of it all. And so I think too, what we see, I know I work with a lot of our state government clients and our higher ed clients, and when working with state government, they have a lot of vacancies right now, and they also have a lot of folks that are going to retire. And in those, when those folks leave, we may not need as many of the vacancies filled, but we sure as heck are going to need the current teams and their expertise of how work gets done, as well as we're going to have to give them some new skills so that they can do work in a faster, smarter way as expected. So that's kind of my take on it for jobs.
Will.
Thank you. So I'll indulge my pessimistic side here for a second, and think about, it was mentioned that I advise different organizations and proud to do that, but my most important advisory assignment is for my 20-year-old daughter who's a sophomore in college. And so she's saying, Dad, I'm not sure. I know I want to major in business. Should I go into accounting or should I go into finance? Now, I should be the perfect person to jump on. I have a 30-year career in business. I know career paths. But because of AI, I'm like, you know what? I don't know. Like, accounting seems like that could be disrupted pretty easily through technology. But I hear there's a lot of openings right now for accountants and not enough people are majoring in it. Finance, that's sort of flying over things with strategic decision making with data. Maybe that's the better play. I don't know is the point, right? And so how do I provide the best advice to, as a manager, to my employees, to my own daughter, to organizations when things are changing so quickly? And that's a bit uncomfortable. The second thing I'd say is there is a downside that AI can be a distraction. So for all the things it can do to help make up time, it can also waste time. So I think of Johnson & Johnson had this strategy called the 1,000 Flowers. And what that was is going out and looking at every place that AI could make a difference in the organization. And so they had 900 and some odd, almost 1,000 of these little flowers that they were investing in. And when they went back and looked at it, like 10 to 15% actually added any value. And the rest were not adding value, taking time, taking resources, taking mind share. And so they pivoted and said, we're going to focus on the critical few. How can AI help with drug development? How can it help with chatbots for our sales reps or for our HR folks? And so having that focus, and I think if you get so caught up in, I could do AI here, and I could do it here, and I could do it here, you might find that you're wasting the very time that you think AI is going to be gaining you.
Will, where you just left that sort of makes me reflect that there's the longer time horizon, right, of jobs that could get created, stagecoach to Uber driver perhaps with a few waves in between, but also the short-term demands on organizations. And that's where I want to turn for this next question, which is how is the organizations you advise, that you work with directly, how have you seen them both rethinking talent acquisition, but then also development in response to AI and automation, rather than just sort of being passive, right, around its emergence? Will, let's start with you, and then I want to hear Kara and Wayne on this, and then Paul, I'll come back to you with the next question.
Sure. Yeah, so one of the things from a talent perspective, there's a different trend that's happening that's maybe not related directly to AI, and that's that the desire for employees to become managers is actually plummeting. Not as many people are saying, boy, I want to get on that career path. I want to get that corner office. Well, corner office may not exist anymore. I want to have my boss's job. Do I really? Is that what I want to do? So how do I, as a corporate leader, say, where do I find those corporate athletes of tomorrow that I need to be the lifeblood of the organization? And so part of that is if you recognize that hunger in someone earlier in their career, then get them into a leadership role quicker. Like immediately double down on that and say, all right, normally it would be 6 years to get this person into a supervisor position. Can I do it in a year and a half? Can I do it in 2? He or she has the motivation and the skills and the drive. And so I may need to disrupt what I would normally do to develop that talent and put someone in sooner. And perhaps they can leverage technology to pick up some of the experiences and information that they didn't glean. But I think that's important. I think the second thing is to really be thinking about your talent holistically. Comcast, where I recently retired from, recently moved all of their talent functions together under a single umbrella. So there used to be a talent acquisition team, talent management, learning and development. Each had kind of their own cultures. So now those are being collapsed and say, how do we look holistically at talent? You know, bringing them in, bringing them up, and moving them out. That almost sounds like a stagecoach kind of thing, doesn't it? Rawhide. But you know, how do we look at that process across the organization and make for a more integrated experience and break down those silos? Companies are creating, Walmart just created their first chief talent officer, whose role is to look holistically at those kind of challenges. So those are some of the green shoots that I'm seeing now. And
Stay on that for a moment. Just the integration of those functions that were, probably thought of as sequential or chronological before. What does the integration allow them to do that they couldn't do before, and why is that important at this moment in time?
yeah, it creates a single organizational voice around talent. So rather than having the development, but you're talking about development during the acquisition. So you have that message throughout that. You're creating a single talent platform. So AI is not going to be as effective, or any automation is not going to be as effective if you don't have good data. And so having good, clean, repeatable, accurate data is absolutely critical. So in the past, you had this is the TA data. Oh, here's our developmental high potential list. It's on this spreadsheet. And here's this over here that we look at for what our leader development curriculum. So having that in a single area that can be drawn upon allows you to look at that holistically, and it breaks down having a technologist for all the different areas, and you're focused on it writ large at the talent level.
Kara, jump in here. You work with a lot of companies. Accenture also is obviously a talent magnet. How are you thinking about these questions of acquisition and development?
Yeah, so I'll talk about Accenture first. Right now, we have about 70,000 data and AI team members.
70,000.
70,000 across the globe, though. And that's about 7 to 10% of our workforce is devoted to data and AI. So we've built that, Accenture has built that by way of some acquisitions, and then also bringing in talent and also reskilling talent. A lot of folks have moved to that segment and want to work in that segment. The rest of the team is all, in development mode. We are always developing to make sure that we understand the new technologies, and we're reminded of that each and every week of by way of required courses or things that we have to catch up on so that we can stay out front. And it's been, it's very clear that in order to develop at Accenture, you need to know these things. You need to take the time to do the training and get up to speed. And so that helps. It's by being a large organization, we can have these large measures in place, right? That allow our teams to know what should I be learning, when should I be learning it, how do I keep moving forward. That said, we still need to attract a lot of talent, and so along those lines, we work with a lot of the universities to understand. We also work with organizations like Skills to Succeed, where we're bringing in talent from underserved areas and helping them develop by way of whether it's a summer internship or by way of a co-op type program, ways to build our team and grow. So I think, there's lots of ways to get to the talent and to help them. I do agree that talent in itself is a huge work stream now. And it's really something that everyone's watching the data. They're trying to understand, how are we going to fill the need for all this new skill and new talent? And so it becomes something that you've got to watch that full work stream along the way and understand how you're faring as far as bringing that talent in.
Wayne, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. You're working with a couple data and cybersecurity companies right now. You've seen AWS put some significant initiatives into reskilling and retraining and so forth. How are you thinking about this question?
So I do look at this question as both tactically and strategically. If we recognize where we are, like why are we all so excited or distraught or something anxious about where we are. This is the first technology I've ever seen come in from the top. Like every technology has been introduced usually from the bottom. Somebody with a credit card or a little lab or garage, and they would start tinkering, and eventually they'd create something interesting. They'd show it to somebody, and it would go all the way up, and somebody says, "Eureka, let's fund this." This is the first time I've seen it all come down from the top. Right? 2 years ago, 90% of the CEOs were saying AI. How is that possible? Like CEOs have other things to worry about, right? But they were all saying it. So there's this tremendous pressure to do something. The 1,000 wildflowers, whatever Johnson came up with, right? So we need to just sort of ground ourselves for a moment, right? And kind of again look at history, look how things have evolved with other technologies, and tactically look at the following reality. There's always a split in an organization when change comes. Doesn't matter what the change is, right? There's 20% of the people who are excited. There are 60% of the people that are thinking, and there are 20% of the people who will tell you no, fill in your expletive way. Right? This is Boston, so you know what the expletive is. And so, okay, so tactically, what do? We have to make progress, right? And if it's all top-down pressure, it's just a bunch of excited, molecules bouncing off each other. Nothing ever gets done. So tactically, what I would recommend is look at this as a bottoms-up exercise, not a top-down exercise. Because if you produce results from the bottom up, the people who are at the top will go, oh, look, something is happening. How are you doing it? Well, let's talk about how we're doing it. And a lot of this is providing people with what they really want, right? They want agency over what they're doing. They want ownership. Right? They want to be able to master this stuff. They don't want to just kind of like run through it. So there are a lot of problems that people can solve with today's version of AI. You want to give them the opportunity and pick from that top 20, because the top 20 will always go figure out something, right? And they're going to drag along the top of that 60, right? 50% of that 60 will follow, because they don't want to be left behind. They just don't want to lead the way. Right? Now, the other part of that 60 and the bottom 20, what's going to happen is going to happen over time. We'll see where that goes. It's not your worry for today. Right? Strategically, different story, right? So how have we thought about changing the makeup of our workforce strategically over time? It's iteratively and it's incrementally, right? It's not all at once. You will have your current set of top 20 that they are the folks that understand the culture. They understand all of the history of the organization, and they want to make change. Those people are amazingly valuable, right? And then you have folks that understand this domain. They just got a PhD, or they came from one of the labs, and this is my only pessimistic thought. It's a realistic thought, actually. A lot of the AI startups that are sucking up all the talent right now, they're going to go away, right? They're going to go away in droves. So there's going to be a lot of great AI talent on the street. You'll be able to hire them, right? Because they'll want stability. They won't want another startup gig, right? But how many do you need? Do you need 1,000 of them? Do you need 2? Do you need 3? The answer is generally 2 or 3, right? For a given organization, a given project of a certain size. So now you have great people that you already have in the organization, know how to navigate everything. They know where all the dead bodies are buried, right? You have 3 people who come in, 2 people, who understand the technology, right? Who can really start upskilling people through leadership, right? And then, and I've done this within, so I started AWS Boston here about 10 years ago. And we grew it from 0. That's me, I'm 0.
Patient 0.
Whatever. 0 is a perfectly good number. And we grew it to almost 5,000 people in 5 years. How in God's name would we do that? Well, we didn't steal them from everywhere, because not everybody was right for the culture. The university system, right? So who comes in with the latest and greatest skills? Students. Who will tell you you're wrong every minute of every day? Students. And they're right 50% of the time, right? So if you take this top 20, a few of those, you hire a few that really understand the technology down deep. They may not know your organization or your business, but they do understand tech. And you hire great graduates that understand the technology, because places have done a great job in educating them, right? You don't need to be scared of this, but it is incrementally and iteratively. It's not, all of a sudden. And right now, because everything's being driven from the top, it feels like everything needs to be done all of a sudden. That will create a Johnson & Johnson situation where, you have 10 things that are good and, 990 that are not great.
So it's interesting, there's this duality, right, if I'm hearing it correctly, of the bottoms-up pressure from something that has been direct to consumer, creating this sort of down pressure from CEOs. We have to act right away. The danger of like thousands of projects going on, who knows what's actually paying fruit. And then I hear one other sort of duality in there, which is 70,000 folks focused on data and technology and so forth at Accenture. You're not talking about downsizing them to 2 or 3 like you could bring into some of these organizations. You're talking about upskilling them. But surely we're going to see some of that as well and some of that migration. And so Paul, I would love to ask you this question, which is, as you're working with organizations and thinking about how to help them upskill, how to help them reskill, how to help them get those those playlists to stay up on the latest and greatest that Kara was telling us about, and close these skill gaps that are created by these emerging technologies. What are you recommending? What do those strategies actually look like on the ground? And where are you seeing the biggest gaps themselves? And then all of you can jump in after, but Paul, why don't you kick us off on this one?
Yeah, thanks. It reminds me that while we're I think Moore's Law came out in about 1965, I think, and the speed with which technology was changing, it would essentially, the power would double every 2 years, and the cost would go down, and the size of the devices and the chips at the time would shrink every 2 years. And we're certainly seeing with AI this exponential increase in the pace of everything, except one thing. All of our supply chains are digitized, except that supply chain that supplies human capital. And the ability for humans to learn is not changing exponentially. It's essentially, it takes a 3-year-old just as long to learn how to, I guess 3-year-olds don't tie shoes, some of them do, but it takes a young child just as long to learn how to tie a shoe now as it did 100 years ago. And so that's the one interesting thing, is we are using technology to, we think, teach better, teach more efficiently, personalize things, personalize on the fly, adapt learning, and yet the human machine is still learning at essentially the same pace that it has learned forever. And so that's one thing, is everything's moving faster, but somehow this training and upskilling or reskilling is going to continue to move at the pace of human learning, which is roughly a very straight line over time. The other thing that I think that we're seeing, and as we work with partners, is sort of a step-level approach in, and this is what we're doing internally at WGU, so I can refer to what we're doing with our own employees, is to say we have single course offerings that we offer. For example, in the AI realm, we're saying it doesn't matter what you do at AI, we want you to be comfortable with working at WGU. We want you to be comfortable working with AI. So we have a single course that we offer, problem solving with AI. It's essentially prompt engineering for everybody. And then for those who, that's enough for me, and I think that's enough for my job, great. But for those who want more, then we have a AI Skills Fundamentals that's a certificate offering, which these days, certificates seem to be something of the rage, and stackable certificates and whatnot, but this is essentially a grouping of courses that help give some more foundational knowledge about AI. And then for those who really want to dive in, we provide a really great tuition discount for our own employees who want to go in, say, to a Master's of Computer Science and really get into the nuts and bolts of AI and machine learning, or a Master's in Software Engineering and really get into the nuts and bolts of AI engineering. And this is essentially what we're seeing with those partners that we're working with too, is rather than a sort of one-size-fits-all, they love the catalog approach and sort of that step level to be able to say, well, for some of our people, this is enough, and for some, we want the full buffet offering.
Gotcha. I'd love to hear from all of you. Innovative learning models, partnerships that have helped organizations start to close this gap. Give us some case studies, give us some specifics on what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, one of the things I want to touch on as I navigate towards that answer is to pick up on the idea of the individual and how you build those skills for the future in AI, right? And it's really kind of two sides of the equation. One, it's what skills and knowledge does the organization push towards the individual, and then what does the individual pull from the organization? And both of those, I think, have to be operating in synergy. In the case of the organization, you have to look at your jobs and say, have I broken them down by what skills are essential to success? You know, have I done that effort rather than talking about having X number of years in this job and having done that, it's what do you really need to do? And we've taken our jobs and we've broken them down into the skills. And then how do we push those skills to our employees? One of the things Comcast is doing is something called Skill Forward, where every month they select 1 or 2 key skills and they push that through the entire organization. This is what we're focused on. This is the spotlight because this is a foundational skill to your future career. But then on the other side, if an individual's not going to have that curiosity, that self-directed nature, the desire to grow, how do you inculcate that? Because if they're waiting for the organization to do everything for him or her, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to rise to the same level of potential that you would have if you can understand how do you embrace the opportunity. So that's where you invest in things like mentorship and coaching, being able to say, hey, this is as much on you as it is on the organization. So how do you, as the individual, say, I'm going to take advantage of what's being pushed towards me, then I'm also going to be pulling from the organization. In terms of innovative things that I'm seeing in academia, you know, one of the organizations that I work with is Holt International School of Business, which is here in Boston as well as globally. And they're using AI to create mini cases for business school. And so rather than going through this long, extended, where you're doing interviews and you're writing up cases and you're iterating on it, they grab a series of executives that are working in various roles in organizations. They send them an AI interview on their computer. They start telling a story. How did you solve this challenge? What did you do? And meanwhile, the business case is being written behind the scenes. And so when it spits out, it's not going to be what a Harvard business case is. It's been tested for years and have all of this. But it's real world and it's practical. And they can use, these are what actual people are using in the role. And so you can push 24 business cases in the course of one single semester of a class. And as you meet someone interesting, you say, hey, that's an interesting challenge you're working on at Accenture or wherever. Would you mind if I sent you a link for a little interview with an AI bot to talk about what you're doing? And then boom, the business case is being generated. And so I think that increases speed to market and increases the hyper relevancy. And then when it's not fresh anymore, throw it out. You have nothing invested in it. It was, you know, a couple of interviews and generated through technology.
I like it. That sounds like a great way to build a business case and jump right in.
I suspect the Harvard Business School publishing company is quaking when they hear
Yes,
this. So.
absolutely. You know, Wayne mentioned the 20%, and you know, when my day job is leading change management, and so as my career developed in change management, so many of the dynamics are around helping people understand how they're supposed to change and being okay with it. And that first 20% are you know, the trailblazers or the early adopters. They'll jump right in and learn super fast because they've got that drive. They want the next change. And then others are going to sit on the fence and they're going to wait and watch what happens to that first 20%. The fence sitters probably need more intervention, right? They need different ways of learning. So we can assign all kinds of you know, courses to them. We can make sure that they're taking their online training. But they're probably, a lot of those fence sitters are probably going to want some hands-on experience. They're going to want a mentor or a coach to guide them. And so I think it comes down to the learning models have to flex for the type of learners. And we know that people learn differently, and not everyone is going to jump in and grasp everything they need to know from an online module. And so I think having the opportunity to talk about it is really important. I love the different models for education now, as far as getting, being able to jump in for a course here, a course there, being able to take a degree program in the evenings or around work. I think a lot of our young people feel like they have to step away for 2 full years to go back to, do their MBA. But it's nice if they don't have to do that, right? And not all of them can afford to do that kind of a jump out for 2 years and then come back. So I think those programs are so critical to allowing our young people to grow and keep progressing in their careers the way they want to, but also fitting their lifestyle of, letting them do a class here, a class there. And so I think, we have to keep that wide spectrum of learning opportunities open based on the different learners and the folks that we know, they have different ways of learning. So I think that's important.
I have so many thoughts.
Where do you want to go?
I don't know. I'm blue screening because there's so many. There's
Generational reference as well. Yeah.
Yes.
reference. It's like an Android thing. That one to bridge. So a couple things. This will be like everything that came before it and nothing like what came before it. If we think about how we bring people up to speed in this world, it is going to be very different than how we brought them up to speed in the previous world. And it just happens to be about the speed at which we need to change. I will look at this again tactically and strategically. Tactically, a lot of what the early adopters will do is on-the-job training. They will learn how to do this using, the term is snackable bites, right? And with what we have with either YouTube or other like mechanisms, today people can come up to speed on any topic really fast. As long as you have quality content out there, and there's a lot of garbage, but there's a lot of quality content out there, right? So I think about enabling learning through results, and those results being driven from the bottom up based on things people want to do. So then there's the famous Google 20%, right? For 20% of the time, do whatever you want. So a day a week, you do whatever you want. This is a great time to think about that model. But instead of saying do whatever you want, do what you let them do what you never let them do, right? A lot of people live in work environments where there's toil, right? We don't really often think about toil, but do any survey once a week on people and see what they love and what they hate, and they always hate the same thing. They hate doing work that's repetitive, non-value add, and doesn't move their career forward. That's signed by dear boss, I quit. This is an opportunity to actually enable that due to speed, because a lot of that toil work we don't let happen because it takes too long, right? They can't be broken into little small pieces that they can do. We're getting to a point with some of that toil where these tools, these automations, can quickly accelerate how people create solutions. And let's assume that the first 3 fail. Who cares, right? They've learned something. Failure is the best teacher, right? Not success. So there's going to be a lot of these failures, but it's not on things that the CEO is looking at. It's a lot of things that the team is looking at. And the team is totally cool with going to the lunch table saying, I tried something and it failed. They're not totally cool doing that during performance review periods. So tactically, use on-the-job training and allow bottoms-up solutions based on things they want to do, but we're not allowing them to do, to be the fodder for the early days. When it comes to the strategic piece of this, it goes back to the answer I said before. You've got to find some folks that understand the technology really well and get them introduced to your world. Put them on a Tiger team, right? Have that Tiger team produce a result for the organization that now can be seen at the top of the company as something that is producing a business and customer valued outcome. A lot of this stuff is just do something. Nobody wants to just do something, right? What problem are we really solving, right? So, the organization needs to learn how to crawl, walk, and run against problems that the business actually cares about. And more importantly, that a customer will come into the business and say, thank you for doing that. So I would break it up into those sort of tactics and strategy.
So you mentioned something interesting there, the 20% time
hope so.
that Google, you mentioned many things that were interesting, but 20% time for the Google employees, and maybe this gets to something that I was thinking about as I've heard all of you reflect, which is one of the biggest things that anyone faces is poverty of time to do these things, right? We're all stretched in a million directions. I see a lot companies saying, you should learn this. And yes, snackable bites I think will help with that. Others, I'm curious, like what other strategies have you deployed to give people the time to do the learning that they need to do? What have you seen? Carrie, you're nodding, so.
Well, it's interesting because I think for a lot of our client work, we're seeing the leadership teams are the ones that really need to learn fast. They want to learn fast because they want to guide their teams, and yet they have no time to learn. And so I think it is really hard right now. I haven't seen the magic model for that, right, of how do you give people time. We try to do it in bite-sized workshops, right? How much can we teach during a workshop and allow them to experiment some and do some activities and we do find that if the leadership team pulls away for half a day or 2 hours even, we can move that forward just a little bit. But I think people are really crunched for time, and it is hard to fit in unless they carve out that time and out of personal drive, right? To say, I'm going to spend X hours a week learning. There's a Copilot and one of the Microsoft, Outlook apps. You can get it to schedule learning time. And it can schedule focus time and those kinds of things on your calendar. And I don't know if any of you have tried it. I tried it, and I seem to move my learning time just about every week. It seems to slide
Right, it falls
off.
back down because it's not the highest priority at the
Right,
moment, or
right.
the urgent and perhaps less important, as Stephen Covey
That's
would have
right.
said.
That's right. And so it falls off the calendar, right? And so then you're okay, I guess, if I've got to get my learning in, when am I going to do that? And people are struggling with how to manage their calendars that way. They really are.
Will, Paul, have you seen anything that you'd say this is something that folks should look at around this problem?
I'll actually pick an example out of academia. Duke this time. So Duke is developing something called Duke GPT, which is their own version of a bot, right? And their own version of how you access AI information. And the theory is that it draws upon trusted sources. So it fences off things that they don't want to introduce. It has high security around it, and then it's exposed to the entire academic ecosystem of the school. And the thought is that you customize and build out and adapt this Duke GPT during your 4 years or 2 years, however long, and that this becomes your lifelong bot, and you're developing it in school, and now you're using it later on in life. So I'm thinking with all of the things out there that you can learn, how does an organization, a large company, create their own GPT and say, this is the one to use, this is the sandbox we want you to use. Now, if you try to put proprietary company info in there, it's going to flag it because we know what it is, and it's going to tell you you can't do that. And if you're trying to go to North Korea to pick up information, but it's going to be that safe sandbox. But then you're able to promote it, and someone will say, all right, this is the tool that I'm to interact with to help guide my career here. So it's just sort of nascent at this point, but putting that stamp and brand on it and saying, we've taken something generic and we're customizing it, and here it is for you, maybe something to think about.
Yeah. We're doing that at Accenture as well. We have
Accenture GPT?
Well, it's called Amethyst. And so, and it is our sandbox to get our work done, as well as play and learn. And it's right on the main portal. So what happens is it's that hands-on learning, right? It's allowing people to just jump right in and use AI to get our work done. And it has the safeguards and the which is great. And it'll tell you when it's pulling from a public model versus Accenture built
Proprietary,
model.
yeah.
But it does allow all of us to get our hands in there and play with it on a regular basis and use it to get our work done.
So I have a couple more questions before I go out to all of you. So just start getting ready for your own questions. But Paul, that just sparked something, that real world learning, because you remarked to me, I have 19,000 folks in the college that I would love to get internships for. And this to me seems like maybe the most important thing, right, as education institutions right now. How do we integrate with companies to give real world work experiences as part of their education to stay on top of this? And one of the central challenges that I observe is companies would love it in theory, but like, again, priorities, de-risking that, working with people new in their careers and so forth. How do we bring these two groups together and get more real world experiences? I'd love to hear from all of you, but Paul, it's top of mind, I know.
Yeah, and the 19,000, by the way, Mike Morris is here. He's our senior director who's responsible for our cybersecurity programs. Mike, I think, single-handedly has brought most of those students into the program, so I want to give credit to Mike for his great work. We think, we'll see, check with us in 12, 18 months, but we think that just like we can, virtual machines was this really crazy idea, like, wait, what? I can create this whole digital infrastructure that actually doesn't exist, but it does exist in a virtual realm. We think that we can virtualize the work experience. We'd love to partner with companies who at least lend us either, these are the skills we would love our employees to show up having, or these are the scenarios that our employees need to be prepared for. They don't have to actually use live data from the company, but if they help us understand that environment or the context that their employees are learning in or need to be prepared for, we can virtualize that experience and integrate it into the student's journey. And I think this is going to become increasingly valuable for our students working to be graduates and then moving up or moving into the workplace, moving up within or moving into the workplace. The other sort of interesting scenario that exists now is increasingly, even for entry-level roles, companies are saying, well, it's an entry-level role, but we want you to have 3 to 5 years work experience. So a student's like, wait, what does entry-level mean? And then with the automation or the efficiencies that AI grants, even fewer potentially, the entry-level roles are the ones that seem to be most affected by this AI wave. And so not only is it more challenging to get into those roles, but if you think of sort of entry-level, will you gain then the experience that's required for the more advanced roles? Well, what if we're no longer hiring as many people? Where in the world are they going to get the experience that's required for the more advanced role? And so, again, I think virtualizing that experience as much as possible so that it's a real-life scenario. It just doesn't happen to be at an actual company. It's the bet we're making. We'll see what happens.
Wayne, Kara, Will, I'd love to hear from you all.
I'll just jump in real quick. You've brought up 2 points today, which I think are amazing, which is the stackable approach, where folks can come in and learn some of the most basic things like prompt engineering, move up the stack to, we'll call it AI engineering, and then move up further into the stack into the hard science behind this technology. That approach is going to allow a lot of folks who want to go beyond the snackables from YouTube to be able to upskill without having to make that 2-year commitment for a master's degree in computer science. I think this is amazing. The other piece of allowing them to gain this, the first 5 years, if you would, of skill so they can get the entry-level job, that insight is one that everybody should take away. Because what we expect from our graduates, not quite today, but pretty much tomorrow, will be what we expect from a 5th-year senior engineer or a senior contributor, today. That's just life. Like we can't make that easier. We're not going to make that go away. It has always been the case. What I needed to know when I graduated from college as a computer science person, and what people know graduating in 2025, boom, like it's like night and day, right? That's why I'm wrong 50% of the time when they talk to me. It's probably more like 70% of the time when they talk to me. So I think this approach and this multifaceted approach that you've articulated for the university is spot on. Now, how do you implement that at scale? That becomes more challenging. And I think it's really scary. A lot of people are now talking about, well, I'm not going to send my kids into computer science. Like, computer science is now dead. Wrong, right? It's now more needed than ever. It's just going to change, right? It's going to accelerate what we need them to understand when they graduate, including what was said earlier about what skill do we need to give them that they're not learning today. I want to go back to Aristotle. There was a time where if you were a physicist, you were a philosopher first, right? And in fact, at some point around the 19th century, we decided to split philosophy and physics apart, right? Because one was science and one was, I don't know, something else, right? I think we need to get back to that model somewhat, which is teaching insight, teaching people how to have high judgment, and then having them appreciate the craft of what they're doing. And today we really kind of focus a little bit on the craft minus, right? Those are the things that are going to get people to really understand how to move themselves forward and become valuable alongside AI. And what was said earlier, AI is not going to replace anybody. People who know AI will replace everybody. So we have to give those philosophical skills, those softer skills, along with the craft and the harder skills, and apply a lot of what you said today in terms of how you could see stacking knowledge over time to make that all work. I think it's brilliant.
Kara.
Yeah, Paul, I love the idea of a virtual internship. I can see how it's doable. We have one area of work we've done with state government where they have caseworkers who need to work with children and families. And the situations are very intense, and yet you need to teach someone what to do in those situations and how to make the right decisions. And so we have virtual training packages that we offer in that, where the scene is played out in a family's home, and the individual, the caseworker, has to decide what action are they going to take, and then they get feedback on that action. The scene plays out farther. So you start to see how that could work. I love that concept of internships. I have an intern that starts for me today. I had to just give him some reading material for the morning. It's hard to bring them in because, again, it's the time crunch. You don't want that student to just sit and stare at a screen all day. You want them to have an opportunity to jump in on a project and work side by side with you. But it takes a lot of time to do that.
So I also think that this is a great idea. I'll touch on it in a second. When you think about AI, there's kind of two realms that you see a lot out there in the press. One is the actual technology component and how you're using AI and all the technology. The other is the branding component. How often do you have a vendor, if you work in a company, that comes to you and says, you want our solution because it has AI in it. It was built with AI, right? And when you come to have a proposal funded, if you can come in and say, and we're using AI, that makes it a stronger business case because people think we should be doing that, right? So paying attention to how you leverage the brand component of things as well as the technology component. So, I'm thinking about this idea of the virtual internship or virtual co-op, right? So you slap a name on it. This is our AI-powered co-op, right? And so you could go to Northeastern, which is a great co-op school, and full disclosure, I did my doctorate there. I think they are very, very innovative. But it's hard. You've got to go overseas. You have to leave. You have to complete school over 5 years. If you could get 80% of that through a virtual co-op, but then bring in other technologies, not just AI, but how does virtual reality factor into that, right? Where you actually feel like you're in that workplace, or you're actually plugging in, and so you're having that immersive experience. So you're getting 70% of the co-op experience at a fraction of the cost, and this is branded as Boom, sponsored by, WWGU would be a thought there.
All right, I lied. I'm going to go out to the audience now for questions. If you could just say your name, organization, and then make sure that your statement ends with a question mark, we'll be in good stead. And we'll maybe not everyone will respond, but if you want to direct it to someone, let us know. And Sarah's got a mic there, so throw up your hand. Anyone has okay, Annie, right over here.
Hi, I'm Annie Cellini with OpenEdX. I'm very interested in your proprietary LMS, and I wonder, and maybe you're already doing this and I don't even know it. Do you see those sort of walled gardens actually becoming your corporate training and upskilling platforms as well? It seems to me if they're holding all of that content, it's a very short step to them actually becoming your training agent too.
Are you speaking of the LMS itself or the AI? Yeah. It's hard to know. I'm not quite sure how to answer because right now the Amethyst is kind of out there for us to do our work and to research and explore and actually do a lot of our reinvention work with our clients, that kind of thing. We use the courseware that we use to get trained up in order to know how to use that is separate right now. It's done through our LMS as a system, and those courses are like packaged courseware on our LMS. So I don't think we've really tied the two yet, that I know of.
There's a huge opportunity there, though.
Yeah.
What's the common business statement now? Feedback is a gift.
Yep.
Well, queries are a gift.
Yes.
Because Amethyst should be is informing you right now where are the gaps, because whatever your employees are searching for is the training that they are lacking.
Yes.
And so
Yeah.
take all those queries, bundle them up, let AI generate a course, and
Yes, in prompt
There you go.
engineering, and yeah, absolutely.
queries are a gift.
Yeah, that's so true.
Other questions? Please don't. Yeah, in the back.
It's sort of a question, but I'm Will Ortiz from Database Associates. I'm on the technology side of things. So
Congratulations.
So I do a good number of AI development, my company does. One of the things I did notice in a lot of the things we deploy is streamlining a lot of business processes and making it more AI workable. But during this process, I've noticed, my company has noticed a reduction in force, where companies have said, okay, well, your process is now making things more efficient. We don't need, let's just say, 50 people to do this job. We're just going to knock things down to like 25. But that's not necessarily our initiative when we do these things. Our goal is to utilize, I'm more on the data side of things, basically make the company use their data more proficiently, make better decisions, and do better predictive analysis. How do I tell my clients that going that route and eliminating staff instead of redirecting staff in other directions? How do I that's not my goal, to have people fired because I'm trying to make things in this company efficient. So that's my problem right now with my company.
That's an unfortunate, I think, an ephemeral problem that we're going to look at. Because every single time we introduce a new technology, it's generally for some efficiency. And so everybody looks at efficiency as we can hire less folks or we can get rid of folks. So this is an old playbook. And that playbook eventually gets closed because it turns out to be false. Right? And then usually for companies that have done that radically, panic sets in because now they don't have the people they need to get stuff done. So I think we need to leverage leaders who are doing exactly that. They're leading the real way. Like you got the CEO of Box, Aaron, who's been posting a lot on LinkedIn lately, and I think he's spot on. And one of the things he says is, if you find efficiencies, performance gains, any gain at all through the use of AI, you get to, this is a terrible statement, but it's his, you get to eat what you kill. Meaning, you don't have to reduce force. You get to use those folks for more, right? So this is an abundance approach versus a scarcity approach. And I feel as though the folks that are saying, well, now that I can do, all that work with less people, I can get rid of people. I can improve my bottom line. That's a scarcity approach, right? And that just that's not sustainable. Now, if you do it like Aaron and you look at it as an abundance, right? The more efficiencies you gain, the more, quote, people you have to do more work. And I will say straight up, there's never been a lack of work. And there never will be a lack of work, right? There's a lack of people, right? There's a lack of knowledge, right? So I would probably coach your clients or your customers using some of these thought leaders that are known to be thought leaders and say, this is an idea, right? So you don't have to call them out.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is what is the strategy, right? And each of those leadership teams you're working with, it's about what is their strategy, and is their strategy to cut cost and reduce their workforce, and it's a shame if that is. Their strategy could also be, I want to upskill the team members I have today and give them new roles or new ways of doing their work when this business process is streamlined and using AI. One of the things I've been hearing about is when a call center, right now, one of the AI applications or use cases is that a call center can have after-call notes all taken through AI. So it listens in on the conversation and then produces the notes. This is a huge time savings. And so immediately your business mindset goes to, oh, well, then we won't need as many people on the phone. But the truth of the matter is, it actually instead will make the people we do have on the phone better listeners. And the way that happens is, right now in today's world, when they take a call, they're thinking, I've got to be writing this all down, or I've got to be typing this all in so my notes are accurate when the call finishes. Imagine that they can just review the notes and they don't have to be on the hook to grasp every word. They're able to ask better questions, to work with their customer in a different way, and to really be a good listener on the phone. But again, we've got to change that mindset of it's about skilling them to do the listening and to take time for them, and to produce, be a better call handler at the end of the day, without reducing the workforce.
Question over here.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I come from.
Oh, wait 1 sec. Let's get on a mic just so it gets captured.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Amazing.
We're making you run everywhere.
Step.
Hi, I'm Joanne. I come from the healthcare industry, and I'm very involved in the workforce development field in Boston and Massachusetts. I'm coming from a space of the people who have very little exposure to AI, and this idea of how do we expose people and help them kind of start playing in that sandbox. And I love the idea of the WGU course, but I'm even thinking, have you seen anything where there's kind of less, is there a one-day thing you can offer? Or what's that bite-sized piece that really gets people in? And then there seems to be a lot of people who want to sell you things. At the end of the day, you don't really know what's valuable. So what's a good starting point? And have you seen anything really successful in terms of just getting people to go into the water a little bit and start problem solving and thinking about prompts?
You mentioned Snackable Bites.
Yeah, I almost want to ask a question back to the entire audience. So let's play a game. I want to say it like the old movie did it.
Do you want to play a
Do
game?
you want to play a game? But then we're dating ourselves, so we can't do that.
We're in good company.
Maybe. Don't drag them into this. How many of you use AI? Raise your hand. You guys are awesome. How many of you use AI every week? Keep your hand up. How many of you use AI every day? Wow, you guys are good. How many of you use AI almost in every process and meeting that you're in some form or fashion? That's where it drops off. So Granola is an application that exists today. You can use it for free. And it will link into any Zoom call. I think it does Google Meet too. I don't know if it does Teams, different problem. And I use it every day. And a lot of us are still working in hybrid environments, so we're on Zoom calls as opposed to meeting face-to-face. But you can actually use it face-to-face too. You just start a Zoom call and listen to you, and it will do it when you're in the room. And it will capture the notes of every meeting and give you a synopsis within a matter of 10 seconds, 5 seconds. You start exposing people to these types of tools, and they go from being concerned that they have to learn something to no learning at all. In fact, there's only value. So to speak to the whole like call center thing, right? If you start exposing people to the value versus the scary stuff that they hear, it's hard not to fall in love. Like, it's almost immediate. I mean, I don't know what I would do without using ChatGPT every single day because I'm a curious person. And Google is always a pain in the neck because you got to go through 10 links and figure out which ones are whatever. I would probably use the approach of how do you introduce these tools, these really practical tools into people's work lives for every moment or every process. They'll figure out which ones they want, whether it's a calendar or note-taking or just replacing Google. And all of a sudden, man, it's addictive. They'll get hooked on the value. It'll become less scary.
Any others are?
Yeah, I'll just, you were asking about resources that people can take advantage of. I think, ma'am, you said you worked at edX. They have a great partnership with Verizon called Skill Forward, where they basically offer free introductory AI training. All you have to do is go to Verizon. They don't try to sell you anything, and you get access to a curated curriculum of some really basic AI courseware. I took the one on prompt engineering, and it taught me a lot, but it also taught me what I didn't know and made me realize that that's where I'd go to a WGU, got to take that to the next level and apply it, or go back to my organization and say, how do I apply it here, day to day at work? But there's lots of free resources, and then it's having the right tool. I never really took to ChatGPT. I didn't want to pay for the extra thing, and I just sort of never fell in love with it. I am an iPhone user, not an Android, and I just sort of took to the Apple. But I love Perplexity. That one seems more fun. They're making a lot of outreaches on different college campuses. It's very innovative, and it's just fun. And so that, for me, got me using it way more than when I was using ChatGPT.
Perfect. I think we have one more question, maybe last one here. Yep.
Yeah, hi. My name is Mihir Desai. I work in financial services. My last employer was BlackRock. I'm trying to do something on my own. And I'm sorry, I was the last person to enter the room, so I probably missed the good part of introductions. And so this question is not just for the panel, but everybody here, if anybody wants to contribute, which is probably not related to the topic of the day, but since we are at a university event. My daughter is waitlisted at Harvard for her college. So is there anything you might advise she can do to increase her prospects?
Yes, have her enroll at Western Governors.
Good. That was perfect. That's perfect. It's perfect.
I'll just quickly jump in and just say, don't wait. Keep learning and show evidence that you're out there being curious and discovering purpose. I think gap years have been rising in ascendancy for a good reason, which is not to backpack around Europe aimlessly, but to actually apply yourself and show that you can work for a community organization, try a few different hats on, learn through the courses that are out there, and gain some purpose for why you want that experience. And I would say that's true in everything, right? It's not just the undergrad, it's everywhere we're going, which is what's the why we're learning. What's that spark that really helps drive? That'll help us, frankly, show us off to an admissions office, or frankly, to our employer as well, separate us. So
Well, I think it showed that societal trend. In the beginning of the conversation, was saying I have a 20-year-old daughter who's a sophomore trying to pick a major. Just like you, I'm trying to think, how do I advise her? What do I say? You're trying to come up with that. And that's a different role for parents right now and for mentors, and there are people out there, and it forces you to kind of raise your game a little bit. You can't rely on those old chestnuts that worked 10 or 15 years ago. And it's one of the things that motivates me to keep learning and keep experimenting and keep trying to read and learn as much as I can in the space. Be a better dad, be a better worker, be a better advisor, be a better human, all the above.
Well, so let me wrap up with this last lightning round, totally unfair question. But as you look forward into the future, and we think about all that AI is doing, and you mentioned it's going to force us to be better listeners. Partially, it's because it's a better listener than we are. So what's the skill or the mindset or the habit that you believe is going to be most critical for humans to thrive in an AI-powered world? Each get to take a stab at that. I feel like you're going to have an answer on this.
So in my first internship, a long, long time ago in a land far away, or was at a time far away, I had this gentleman, his name was Colin Strutt, Dr. Colin Strutt. And as an intern, one day I wandered into his office, and he was one of these like technology geniuses and leaders, right? So it's kind of a scary place to wander into. And after I was done asking him some trivial question, I'm sure, he said, "Do you know why you're in a university?" And I'm like, I gave him the standard answers to get a degree, get a job. He goes, "No, none of that's true." He goes, "Your job right now is to learn how to learn," right? And that stuck with me forever, because I think the most powerful skill is being curious and learning.
Oh, you just took mine.
Come on.
It's okay. You can
You can use it.
You can all double down on it.
By the way, he had it written down. I'm just reading off of his stuff. So I apologize.
Now you'll buy a Remarkable. No, go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where I would point people to, and some of the things we talked about in terms of developing some of these softer skills is going to be important. One of the worst pieces of advice you'll ever get in a commencement speech, it's usually from somebody who's already famous and has a lot of cash, is follow your passion, right? I don't know about you, but I'm a dyed-in-the-wool engineer. Like, I don't have passion, but I have a shit ton of curiosity, right? And that turns into learning, and eventually that turns into a passion. And that's sort of what I think is important.
Paul.
Curiosity and embrace change.
I'd say critical thinking. I think as we hear the doomers come through with, some dangers of AI and that kind of thing, I think we need really careful thinkers that are going to guide the technology, as well as careful thinkers as to where we should use it, where we shouldn't, and to make really good leadership decisions. So I think when a student comes out of college, having the ability to make a decision, to really think through a problem and decide critically which way it should go, or what would be the risks or outcomes of a certain direction, those skills have got to be there.
First one that popped in my mind was curiosity. I think that's been taken across the board, so that's a good one. But the second thing I think is just a desire to win. Do you have a desire to win? And are you continuing to foster that internally? And winning the big game, like getting the big promotion or the big career, or winning the small game, advising my daughter, whatever it is. I mean, even coming to this panel, I wanted to win. I did some research. I read the questions. Like, I wanted to come in and win. I wanted to, be worthy of the seat that I'm sitting in, right? And when I look at the military, spent a lot of time in the Navy. You want those people that are coming in. I want to win. I want to make the most out of this. I want our ship to be the best, our department to be the best, our team to be the best. I think that's contagious. And if you want to win, it means you need to continue to up your game. It means you need to try to stay a step ahead of the competition. Maybe you can't always do it, but at least you're trying. And that's one of the number one things that I look for if I'm hiring or looking to learn from someone. Do they have the desire to win?
Will, Kara, Paul, Wayne, thank you for helping us all win this morning. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
As we close out, let's again thank our panel and moderator. Let's give them another round of applause.
Remarkable.
Before they exit, we would like to give them a token of appreciation. We're going to start here with you first.
Thank you. It's very kind.
I thought you were going to give him one of these books.
I have a few.
Paul, I'm giving you, as I know you have this already.
Thanks a lot.
Michelle has her book as well.
It's such a pleasure.
Hey, likewise.
Very nice.
As we close out, I also realize that we have a couple of students or alums. So if you're a student or alum of WGU, please stand so we can recognize you as well.
Yeah, you got it.
See, they're great people. I'm just saying.
Hey, so I would just ask, make sure you network, get to know our students. For those in here as well that are partners or looking forward to partner with us, make sure you connect with someone from WGU. We are invested in growing not just this state, all states that we serve, as we realize the more educated our communities are, the better our communities are. So again, we thank you for coming out. There's also a book. Make sure you take time to read this. Thank you as well for showing up. This is our magic at WGU. We show up, and we will continue to show up. And so again, you showed up as well, so we look forward to partnering with you. Another thing I would like to do, I would be remiss if you are an employee at WGU, please stand as well. We want to acknowledge you for your hard work as well. So. And Paul, any closing remarks from you, sir?
I think I've said enough.
We look forward to continue connecting. Thank you again. Take this opportunity to network, and thank you again for showing up and showing out. Thank you.
Thank you.